evening. Welcome to the Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting, September 2nd, 2014. We'll begin our meeting with the salute to the flag, please. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Poland?
Mr. Galloway? Mr. Bransky?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dent?
Here.
Mr. Rocco?
Here. Let the record show Mr. Galloway is at work this evening, so he was not able to be with us. Okay, we're going to begin our meeting with a presentation. Mr. Gray, you want to introduce us, please?
Yes, recently the Fire Marshal Rich DiPolito was informed he has earned the advanced certification from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for emergency management coordinators. Here tonight to discuss this issue is Mr. Harry Crow from the county.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I don't need this, do I?
Yes.
Yeah, you do, actually. We're recording it. Sorry.
Am I on TV?
You can take
Yes, yeah, you're on TV.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Harry Crow. I'm with the Bucks County Emergency Management Agency. What I do from time to time, I go to different municipalities and present these certifications to your emergency management coordinator. On a personal note, I'd like to say that I've known Rich DiPolito and his family for many years. And I told you when you first hired him, you couldn't have picked a better guy, more qualified guy. But with that responsibility of being an emergency management coordinator, Pennsylvania Emergency Management expects you to take certain courses and get your basic certification in emergency management, and then they expect you to get your advanced certification. Getting your advanced certification, you have to complete 6 courses and then attend trainings up at our county emergency operating center. And Rich has completed that, and I'm very proud to present this tonight on behalf of Bucks County Emergency Management Agency, on behalf of the state of Pennsylvania and our county commissioners. Rich? Thank you. Congratulations.
I think
I don't have to say anything. Just thank you for the time.
you're going to get a picture taken.
It's actually taught me.
Oh,
Harry, get over this side.
yeah.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Crow.
You're welcome.
Good seeing you again.
Hey, Mom, I said hi.
Okay. All right. Item number 1 is public comment. We have a 5-minute limit per person and a 45-minute maximum for this particular agenda item. Mr. Gray is getting the sign-in sheet. Thank you. Okay, first name on the list is Dick Trimble.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm coming back to try to find out what happened with the issue about the ordinance.
The school bus.
Yeah, well, are they exempt or aren't they?
We did actually have our solicitors take a look at the ordinances, and as the ordinances are written, there is a limit to vehicles weighing a certain amount, over a certain amount, parked in residential streets. However, the way the ordinance is written does carve out an exemption for school buses. Now, that being said, that doesn't prevent the police from, if they're driving down the street, because certainly there are some roads in Falls Township where you could park a school bus and it wouldn't really interfere with, line of sight for people making a turn onto the road or off the road, or just traffic on normal patterns back and forth. There are certain roads where you can't. So the police still can ask whoever is in control of that school bus to move it. It isn't required to be moved just for being a school bus, but it does have, it's up to the police to take a look and see if it's creating a dangerous situation, if it's a traffic hazard. That's kind of how it's written right now. So the board, I don't know.
We can change the ordinance.
Yeah, we've had
so
some
that
discussions about,
we
do
can
we
limit
want to
how long
change it?
someone can park during the
Right,
day.
so we're kind of in the stages of talking about it.
In the ordinance somewhere, it's written that they're exempt. Is that correct, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
What it says is that the code prohibits the parking of commercial vehicles who registered gross vehicle weight is equal to or greater than 14,000 pounds in residential districts at all times. There is then a separate section which says school buses are specifically barred from overnight parking on residential streets or residential property. The fact that the ordinance specifically references school buses and specifically says they cannot park overnight is an indication that the ordinance is not referring to school buses as commercial vehicles. That is also consistent with the vehicle code in Pennsylvania. So while it does not carve out a specific exemption, when you do look at all sections of the code, it is our opinion that school buses are allowed to be parked on the streets, residential streets, during the day, but not overnight.
And that's for a unlimited amount of time. Even though, you know,
Mr. Trimble, I think that's part
I
of the
think you
problem is
need to
that,
change the ordinance, all right? And anything I can help to do that, I would be more than happy to. It presents a hazard.
I think, somebody's going home for lunch, like we discussed, 45 minutes or whatever they're going home for would be one thing, but
yeah, I think part of the problem is the length of time. I mean, how,
9 a.m. to
talking
3 p.m.
hours.
Nobody's saying anything about that, all right? That's really not the issue. The problem is that since you've rendered this decision, you've opened up a real can of worms. What are they permitted to do or what aren't they permitted? The way he reads it, they can be parked there on any time they want except at night.
correct.
And that's not, no disrespect, you'll never get me to agree to that, because that's not the way the ordinance reads. It specifically prohibits a list of vehicles in addition to commercial vehicles, because there's a big difference. If it was a tractor trailer, commercial vehicle, no doubt about it. But a bus is a bus is a bus. Just because it's not a motor coach or it doesn't belong to SEPTA does not change the fact that it's a bus. And that's what the ordinance specifically says, buses. It doesn't change that. At the end of the ordinance, that one paragraph, there's a period. Then it says about not parking overnight. That, to me, is part of the ordinance, isn't even needed. Because if you read the first paragraph, they're prohibited, regardless of time of day. Now, if, like you said, if they're stopping in half an hour, 45 minutes an hour, I don't think anybody can complain. And I know people that park their buses certain areas longer than that, and the neighbors don't complain. They don't have a park around the corner either.
Code of ordinances.
And that's the issue. It's a lot has to do with the geographics of the situation. You do have a park around the corner. Now, they don't park the Pennsbury school buses there because Pennsbury doesn't want it parked on the streets. All right? Now, if Pennsbury's smart enough to realize that, I don't know why the township isn't. All right? The next issue is, I don't want the police officers being the judge. Cite them, let the judge make that decision. All right? And that's it. I mean, I said that last time, due process. And that is a real thing that sticks in my craw. You're going to pass additional ordinances. If you're not enforcing what you have, why bring up new ones?
I think it's important to point out that Mr. Trimble is, the section he gave us 2 weeks ago, and the section he keeps referring to, is a section from the zoning code. We're looking at the Code of Ordinances. We're looking at Section 203, which governs parking and regulates all parking on township streets. So in a zoning context, Mr. Trimble is making one argument, but we're looking at it from the Code of Ordinances. And when Mr. Trimble says not enforcing the ordinances we already have, we are enforcing the ordinances we already have, just not to your liking.
Yeah, well,
right.
We agree on that issue. 203, what? What section are you talking about?
203-22.
And that's online?
It
Should be.
It should be.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll look it up.
Okay.
And I apologize if I'm looking in the wrong section. But
I mean, it's still an issue, and I think it's a valid complaint. And like I said, I think, we talked about it a little bit, just a couple of us before the meeting. There's certainly roads in this township where you could park a bus and it's not going to bother anybody because of how wide the streets are. But there are a lot of roads where you can't do that.
Right.
So I don't think it's a crazy point to bring up. It's just that, this was something that, we'll take a look at and see if we'll talk to Pennsbury. It's one of the notes I made was to talk to Pennsbury specifically about their busing policy. I know the bus you referenced was Calvary Christian, I think, was the bus you referenced.
Well,
but
I don't want to get into many schools, but they drive to
wasn't a
Pennsbury
Pennsbury
too.
bus.
They're parking down in the
Right,
park. They're
yeah.
not parking on the street. They only park the summertime buses on the street. And that's actually even worse because you have more kids around
Sure,
in the
right.
summertime.
Right. Okay.
I know you don't have a lot of names. If you want me to leave, I will, but I'd like to bring up one other matter. Time permitting? Do
All right. Go ahead.
you want me to come back to the next meeting?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Be happy
It's all
to
right.
come back.
It's all right.
I will be here anyway.
Wasting time now. Come on.
Okay. I had occasion to get down to the park,
The Township Park.
not the community park, but I forget what you call it. now.
Quaker Penn Park?
Yeah, Quaker Penn Park. I have occasion to go to a lot of baseball games. And that field down there is terrible. I mean, the infield, when we were playing on that infield, when the kids were playing on the infield, their cleats just tore that infield up. I mean, it was a mess. When we left there, looked like somebody went over a rototiller. And I looked at the numbers that you're spending on that, and I saw too down there a lot of money for maintenance of that field. Now I don't know who's doing the maintenance work, but you need to have a talk with them because your outfield is starting to infringe on the infield already. The grass is starting to grow into the infield. They're not doing anything about that. And whoever put the bleachers in, you're not sitting in the top row or the bottom row, you can't see the game. I mean, it's a nice facility. It really looks good. But it's just not a good situation. I mean, the location, some of the comments I got from other people drove down there with their children were something else because they just couldn't believe anybody would put a park in among all those dumps, all right? And I really think you need to take a hard look. There's an opportunity this township right now to get some land that would be easily accessible, and you could put some ball fields in there and probably make a nice big piece of change.
Did they happen to notice there was a state historic site right next to it? Were they complaining about the location of that too?
I don't think half of them knew it was there.
Well, then that's
I mean,
shame on
some
them.
of the discussions they asked, and I told, William Penn's got to be crying with those dumps around his house. You know,
He's dead.
Yeah,
When we built the ball field, we looked, and that was the only place that we really had at the time
Right.
that was ready to be built. It might not be the ideal location, you're right.
right.
The
right.
park and the soccer fields were there
It's just
long
a
before
lot of
anybody else
money.
was.
A lot of money. You know? And I know maybe not in the community park, but I think you ought to go after St. Joe's and buy that property.
It's already sold.
It's already sold.
That's under agreement?
Yep.
You missed a big opportunity there.
Well, we didn't know the opportunity
We
existed.
knew. It was sold
It's
before it
been
was
sold.
closed.
It's been sold for about 2.5 years.
All right. Because if you could do what Berks County does, you'd make a fortune.
Thank you.
They got to make $100,000 a weekend on baseball over there.
Next name on the list is Roland Kenny. Is he here? Oh.
Actually, it says Ron.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so used to seeing Roland Kenny's name. I apologize for the insult.
He couldn't make it, so he asked me to come and read this
Okay.
letter for him.
Okay.
I don't know why you said that an EIT can't give you $16 million in 1 year. Falls doesn't have any income source that can give them $16 million in 1 year. What we did say is that the EIT of 1% would produce about $4 million a year without raising taxes on the overwhelming residents of Falls, especially seniors. Even if that is split with our school district, that is still $2 million per year for both the school and Falls Township without real estate taxes increasing. Rather than dipping into the reserve fund, which is a bad idea, replacement plan without a replacement plan, or going into debt by borrowing from banks and bond issue at the cost of millions of dollars, it seems reasonable to enact an EIT. With the road program of $6 million soon coming to an end and a $2 million EIT contribution per year, we could utilize our reserve fund and replace those funds within an 8-year period and probably earlier. An EIT is a cost-free method of paying for our complex and avoiding possible real estate tax increases. The seniors are for it. Without this new income source, where will the money come from to pay for this complex and replace the cost of borrowing? We should do research to determine the potential income Falls would receive through an EIT. Middletown used the Philadelphia firm of eConsult Solutions. They are extremely accurate. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are his words, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're his son?
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't hold it, yes.
Those are the only names on the list. I don't know if anybody else wishes to speak. Mr. Mariani, I thought you were you'd be interested. That's why I made that mention.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brief overview, and I will be brief, on geothermal to correct any misconceptions that may have occurred during our last meeting. Now, when Mr. Trump said that the cost of geothermal system would cost between $250,000 and $350,000, that didn't mean in addition to the projected costs on the complex, nor did it mean that $250,000 or $350,000 more than what it would cost to have a conventional system. Geothermal does cost about twice what a normal or conventional system costs, but the thing is, once you get by the initial cost, you're home free. So we're estimating $125,000 to $175,000 more to install geothermal in our complex. While they do cost more to install, geothermal systems have the lowest life cycle cost of any cooling system that we know of. Someone mentioned electricity. There is a small amount of electricity, is the only really external energy that geothermal uses to operate the ground loop pump, the fan, and the compressor. In fact, geothermal uses 25% to 50% less electricity than any conventional system. So that's why I don't want people to get confused with some of the things that were said. On average, geothermal has a 48% greater efficiency than the gas furnace, 75% greater efficiency than an oil furnace. It lowers utility bills by 40 to 80% lower than a conventional system. That's why there's 500,000 installations in the United States today. Someone else mentioned gas. Now, presently, there's an abundance of gas. This particular fossil fuel, which the lady from Congresswoman from Kryptonite, who wants to save the world, says is not a fossil fuel. Gas prices are affected by the availability. You know what I'm talking about. California gal's going to save the world. Gas prices are affected by availability, and gas is not finite. As a fossil fuel, it does have limits and it does have bounds. So where gas is going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now, we don't know. What happens if the means of extracting the gas becomes prohibitive or becomes prohibited, as it is in certain parts of New York? And Mr. Trump says that for the long-term owner of a complex this size, it's a no-brainer. You have free renewable supply of solar energy which heats the ground. That's how geothermal works. It can't run out of oil, can't run out of gas. There's no price volatility there. The efficiency rating is 5 times higher than ordinary systems. Savings, we set 40 to 80% on utility bills, depending on what system you have in place. Reduced carbon footprint, the system doesn't burn any fossil fuels. There's less maintenance. The pipes are 20 to 50 years, heat pump 20 years or more. Return on investment between 3 and 5 years. And the United States Department of Energy, there's a tax credit 30% off, and there is no cost on the upper limit. And that will expire December 31st, 2016. We can take advantage of that. You heard the thing, Buy American. Geothermal heat pumps and the machines to put them in the ground are all made in the United States. Now, although I'm in favor of a new township complex, which I have been from the beginning, I still favor option one. I believe that that can satisfy our needs for a new concept well below the projected cost of $17 million. I really think right now that's over the top. Again, I encourage you to have a study done on the potential income of an EIT, which would, over time, actually pay for this, and stop subsidizing some of our townships around us by not having one. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Those are all the names on the list. Okay, any non-residents? See no hands. Okay, so we'll move on. Item number 2 is a presentation from Lyft regarding services for Falls Township. I see a couple representatives here. Mr. Sanderson from the school board is a longtime Lyft representative, so I'll let him go ahead and introduce his guests and the program itself.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to address the board this evening. My name, as you know, is Gary Sanderson. I am from the Lyft Prevention Coalition. I am currently the vice chairman. In addition, I am a parent and a school board member that shares the passion to create a safe environment for our children. With me tonight is our current executive chairperson, Pastor Vicki Allen from the United Methodist Church. We have Emily French, who is our community mobilizer. And last, we have Tim Philpott, who is our Lyft project director. As you may know, Lyft is a volunteer community coalition, a group of individuals that come together with a common purpose to promote healthy and safe development of youth and reduce risk for youth that reside anywhere in the Pennsbury School District. The name Lyft is an acronym that stands for the 4 municipalities that constitute the school district: Lower Makefield Township, Yardley Borough, Falls Township, and Tullytown Borough. Lyft is made up of individuals from 12 different sectors of the community coming together to bring their different expertise, resources, passions, and unique points of view to address the challenges that face our youth today and to make the entire community a safe and better place for our students to live and grow. Lyft membership is comprised of parents, youth, school officials, health professionals, law enforcement members, youth-serving agencies, the media, government, and faith-based organizations. Lyft is not a new organization, as we've been serving the youth in our community for over 15 years. I'd like to turn it over to Tim Philpott.
Thank you. Good evening. Just a bit about our mission and goals at Lyft. As Gary mentioned, Lyft has a primary purpose of serving youth in our community. And right now we have had, for the last several years, a primary focus on substance abuse prevention and healthy decision-making among youth. We do work with the school system, but we work more broadly than that, acting in the community, providing supports for parents, providing after-school program for kids, many community-based initiatives that support our students. Some of the other things that we're involved in that you may know of are we provide support for the prescription drug take-back program, of which Falls participates in. We conduct something called Project Sticker Shock, which reminds people who are buying beer at local establishments that it's illegal to provide to minors. We provide evidence-based prevention programs in the community, as well as those programs for parents as well as kids. We do some media outreach, public service announcements, trying to promote to youth and to parents that substance abuse is a preventable illness, and that there are ways to help our youth make healthier decisions as they go. I want to bring you up to speed a little bit on the changing landscape in which LIFT is operating. We've been providing these kinds of supports to the community for years, and we plan on continuing to do so with our community partners, but the landscape is shifting somewhat. For the last 9 years, we've been fortunate enough to have be the holders of a federal grant that takes federal dollars and lets local community coalitions make decisions about how they're dispersed for prevention efforts. It's part of what the feds call the Drug-Free Community Support Grant Program. As I say, we've been part of that for 9 years. It's a 10-year grant cycle. So as of September 2015, that program will be coming to an end for us. It's not a renewable grant. So in order for us as a coalition to remain viable and to continue to support the community, we're carefully examining our options for gaining future community support, including writing for other grants, doing our own independent fundraising, and looking at other sources of support that might be available to us. We're also in the process of trying to determine who some of our key partners might be and what our main focus should be going forward. So with that in mind, I'll let Gary sum up where we are, and I thank you for your time.
LIFT's major accomplishments thus far are increased awareness, community mobilization, and positioning ourselves to assume responsibility of addressing risk to our youth and monitoring its progress. Our strategy and management has been somewhat governed by our grantors. As those funds are exhausted, however, in order to continue our work, the responsibility for resourcing and planning will shift to the community itself. To that end, we will be holding a community stakeholder meeting in October to which all of you will be invited. It is important to us that you come because we need your support. The purpose of this meeting is to offer a more in-depth explanation of what, how, and when we will transition, shifting certain responsibilities away from the fund granting institutions to the community itself. This is going to be a real challenge, but as long as we work together, we can continue to help our youth. In our conversations with other sectors, we find the general consensus that our work is needed and must continue. The date for this meeting has not yet been determined. However, it will be an evening meeting in October, and it will be held at the Social Hall at the First Methodist Church at 840 Trenton Road in Fairless Hills. In short, we want to be able to show the community the value we provide in keeping our kids safe and healthy, and to increase community buy-in, leadership, and problem solving. By community support, we are not talking about financial support, but just as important, we need individuals and organizations, strong and committed partners, to give their input into what the greatest challenge facing our kids is, and where our efforts and resources should be directed so that we can have the greatest impact in supporting our kids to grow up healthy and strong. So remember our name and look for our communications and our invitation. We sincerely hope that you are able to join us for a great discussion in October. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time. I can say I've been to a couple of LIFT presentations over the past few years, just as a parent and also sort of as an elected official, and that they are very, very worthwhile events. Good speakers, knowledgeable about different issues that affect teenagers today, and it's really just, helpful for parents to come together and hear from other people, like what's going on and things they can be aware of. So I appreciate the work you've already done and the work that you'll continue to do.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 is a certificate of appropriateness for 88 and 90 Main Street in Falsington. This is to strip and re-roof. These are 2 homes that are connected, so they share a roof. Board members have the information in front of them. They also note that this was already reviewed by the Historic Review Board, and was, all 3 members voted in favor. Comments or questions from board members? There's some photographs as well. Comments or questions?
I have none.
No? Okay, is there a, there's also, installing shingles and installing gutters. You forgot to put the gutters. Is there a motion then to approve the certificate of appropriateness for 88 and 90 Main Street?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 4 is consider resolution for Gilleste Falls Township approval of financing application for construction. Mr. Gray?
Yes, resolution has been prepared approving a project to be financed by the Quakertown Area Industrial and Commercial Development Authority for Gilleste. The board is asked to consider this item at this time. In addition, Mr. Bob Cormack is here to discuss this item.
Good evening. Bob Cormack, Bucks County Economic Development Corporation. I'm the Executive Director. I'm also with the Quakertown Area Commercial and Industrial Development Authority as their administrator. Tonight, we are looking at a company called Gilleste Inc., which is on 11 East Steel Road, Morrisville. You know the site. The corporation has been involved with Gilleste since its conception. We've done over 5 small business first loans with the company, 2 machinery and equipment loan funds. Both of those programs are with DCED, Department of Community Economic Development, 3 PETA loans, and we've also done 4 tax-exempt issues for the company. Currently, they have 97 employees, 106 worldwide, and they're looking to increase their employment by another 15, and that would actually increase with ancillary jobs during construction. The company is looking to finance a 22,000 square foot facility. The bond issue was for $10 million, which is going to encapsulate some refinancing of dollars. They're using the Quakertown Industrial Development Authority, which my organization represents. We have a lasting relationship with the company, a long-lasting relationship with the company, and we want to move forward with the project. I have Barry Orkles here, the president of the company, and Bill Gray, if you have Bill Fry, if you have any questions.
Okay, so just for clarification, and I'll ask our solicitors to clarify this if I make a mistake on the clarification. Because this is being financed through a development authority, and because it's in our township, we're simply being asked to sign off on the fact that we're acknowledging the fact that's happening in our township. We're acknowledging the fact that they're getting the financing through this other organization. It doesn't sort of remove them from paying taxes to Falls.
That is correct.
This is simply, it's a financial incentive that's being run through Quakertown.
The IDA in itself is nothing more than a conduit which allows the company to receive a lower interest rate through the banking institution because it's a federal program.
Okay.
Where does the IDA fit in?
The IDA is a conduit which allows the bank to provide tax-free financing to the company. The bank, the bank receives a break on their tax rate based on the financing involved. In return, they give the company a lower interest rate.
So do you represent 2 different organizations?
I represent the Bucks County Economic Development Corporation, which is a private nonprofit, as their executive director, and the corporation is contracted out with the Quakertown Area Industrial Commercial Authority to represent them on tax-free financing.
Okay.
So the Bucks County Economic Development Corporation is not officially connected to Bucks County. It's not a branch of...
No, we are a private nonprofit organization since 1958.
Okay. Yeah, this doesn't, if this were to be approved, it doesn't connect Falls Township. It's a unique situation. I don't remember ever having to do this before with any other kind of authority. It's just basically saying that, we know it's coming, and we know that this is a company that's been here for a while. They're making improvements to a facility we're proud to have already. So we're glad that they're staying, and they're getting this financing through a third party. It doesn't connect us at all. We're not liable for any of the financing that's coming in. For the last month or so after we got this, we weren't really sure why it was coming in front of us to begin with. Where do we fit in? But I guess it's just sort of an acknowledgement. It's a hoop to jump through, maybe. Is that maybe a good way to put it?
Regulation by the federal government of the highest taxing body.
It's a hoop to jump through, so, okay.
So where's the county IDA fit in? They're not involved at all?
No, sir.
Okay.
But you mentioned
You mentioned
them.
You mentioned them twice.
Quakertown IDA.
Oh, okay.
So not the Bucks County IDA.
Bucks County Economic Development Corporation is my organization, which is a private nonprofit. Since 1958,
Right.
we contracted out with the Quakertown IDA to do tax-free financing.
And you guys have done financing through Quakertown IDA before?
No, this will be the first time.
Use the mic, please.
I'm sorry.
I'm Barry Arkless. Yeah, so this will be the first time through the Quakertown IDA. I'm actually not sure of, I will call it the labyrinth of how all these agencies work with, but the general concept is that the state sort of creates a bond. There's an agency that is associated with the state that says the bond is okay, and since it's a state bond, that allows the loaning authority, which is ultimately the banks, to be able to say that they're buying a bond and they get it's the same as if you would buy a municipal bond, you don't pay federal tax on it, and that's how it works. The machinations are, I have to say, who has the ability to do the bond with more facility. Beyond that, I don't really understand why you'd use one of these authorities versus another, but that's the general concept that flows from the regulations of the federal government, correct me if I'm wrong, through the state, which allocates which areas are going to be able to generate these bonds, because they don't want to have, Bucks County has done extremely well over the years to the detriment of some other counties that would rather see the money. But because Bucks County has been very active overall in creating these bonds, they use a number of IDAs to bring it from the state. So it's, I guess, seems it's fairer. I don't know how to explain it, but that's my understanding.
When you say Bucks County, you're talking about his company, not the actual county.
There is, I'll let Bob speak to that.
That's where I'm getting confused.
There are 13 industrial development authorities in Bucks County. Any one of the authorities can do a tax-free financing project anywhere in the county. Telford, the IDA, has done projects in Northampton Township. Projects have been in the lower end up in the Percy IDA. It's just
But when he's talking about going through the Bucks County, he's talking about your company. He's not talking about actually Bucks County IDA.
That is correct.
That's the question. Have you talked to the Bucks County IDA? They have nothing to do with any of this.
Candidly, we did not, because we didn't recognize there was a difference between these IDAs.
Okay. Right, other comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, when are you ready to start construction? Where are you at with?
As soon as we get this approval, we will go into final settlement with the bank, which will take place within 1 week of when we get your approval, and groundbreaking is expected to take place within 2 weeks after that.
Oh, okay.
So if we miss this in this new kind of, I'll call it construction, which is mainly poured concrete, if we go later into the winter, we will lose at least 6 months.
Understood.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so this would be a resolution, correct? All right, and the resolution would be 14-25. 25. All right, so is there a motion in approving resolution 1425?
I'll approve the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you. Good luck, gentlemen.
Gentlemen, thank you all. We appreciate being here. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Yeah. Let's go. That's great. Yeah.
No doubt.
Okay, next item on our agenda is Keystone NAP Data Storage Facility, preliminary and final land development. This is for a new facility in the KIPC. So we have a couple, if you wouldn't mind just identifying yourselves and...
Sure. Good evening. My name's Henry Van Blanc with the law firm of Stark & Stark. With me this evening is Brian Champiti, our PE, and also is the president of Keystone NAP, John Parker. The board may recall you approved subdivision for this parcel, I believe it was in April of this year, and now we're here for our land development. Just by a little bit of a background, this is a 9.42 acre parcel in the COZ zone. There's currently an existing 62,450 square foot building on the property. We're proposing to retrofit that building for a data center. The reason we're here tonight is because we're going to be putting in a 32 space parking lot, which will trigger the land development approval. We've received the review letter from T&M Associates, and I thought it'd just be easier just to address the waiver requirements because everything else will be will comply.
That's fine.
The first waiver requirement is to section 191-45C, requesting a waiver from construction of the parking lot and storm sewer infrastructure within an easement. The second waiver request is to section 191-62A. This is requiring curbs to be provided along both sides of the streets. The next waiver request is 191-78C2. Which is a partial waiver requiring plans to show locations, names, lists of streets, locations of railroads, locations of property lines, water courses, and similar things. And then we have a waiver request for street trees. We're actually going to withdraw this waiver request because it's our understanding that the street trees are only going to be required along Solar and Middle Drive, and the drive coming in is really our driveway, and street trees don't need to go along there, but just Middle and Solar. But that's why the initial application showed a waiver request, because until your engineer had an opportunity to look at that, we weren't sure whether the driveway coming in would be considered a street or a driveway. And then the last waiver request is pursuant to Remington and Vernick's review letter, where they suggested a traffic study. We're asking for a waiver request on this. We're proposing a 32 space parking lot. Our traffic's going to be pretty minimal, and compared to the traffic that used to go back in that area, we think we're not really going to have any impact on the road's infrastructure within the facility.
Okay.
And we're open to questions on these items.
Just before I turn over to board members, I'm just going to ask, if you don't mind, I mean, obviously, we're familiar with the project. It's sort of been in the pipeline for a while in one form or another. But could you, just for the probably vast majority of people that don't know what a data center is, just give an idea of what it's going to be doing, what kind of retrofitting is going to happen, how many employees, all that kind of stuff?
I think I'll have Mr. Parker kind of address that,
okay,
so I don't misstate what exactly a data center is.
That's fine.
Sure. So the first question was, I think, what is a data center, or what are
Go over the whole project. What exactly?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to rehabilitate this facility, and then we're going to have third-party hosted computer servers in our facility. So the types of clients that we'll have in will be people like some of the major health systems in our region, some of the educational systems in our region, some large enterprises, and they'll actually house their applications in our building. And what we plan to do is, working with Schneider Electric, build out the interior of the motor building and go 3 stories high with this type of infrastructure. Initially, our business model is to have really just co-location services, so that's why you have 30 parking spaces, in phase 1. Longer term, we see us providing, managed services and actually run the data center and the servers for our clients. So that'll probably mean a second parcel that we acquire on site, and we'll probably look to expand and build into an actual campus there, contiguous to the property that we have today. Is that responsive to?
I think so. Any other questions?
I was just curious, do you have a redundant site somewhere else?
We'll have to have redundant sites someplace else for certain customers, and that'll have to be at least 30 miles away from our current site. We have a couple of candidates in mind. You can rent space from existing providers to do that. Typically, a customer's redundant site is much smaller than their primary site. Right. And our intention is for this to be a primary site for our clients, not a secondary site.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay.
So I guess for laymen, like 3 of the 4 of us up here,
Obviously.
for laymen, this is essentially a warehouse for information. Universities, hospitals, this is someplace they can send data, so they're not having enormous servers on their own campus. They have to, feed in terms of electricity and everything else.
Yeah. So what's happened over the years is that as the internet's gotten faster, your data doesn't have to sit right next to you anymore. And a lot of these institutions have their data centers in their buildings, and they're highly vulnerable. Security, power issues, they can't grow. People are using more and more devices, right? So data continues to grow, so it's a real problem for them. And what's ideal about our site in the township is it has this tremendous utilities infrastructure, right, that's not used. And it's ideal to be repurposed for this particular use. Over time, companies have continued to get out of, and educational institutions have gotten out of the business of hosting their own stuff, but they've been slow. But that's the wave that we're riding right now. And the secondary wave is actually take over the actual management of the applications, not just the hosting of their infrastructure. So you'll see, an evolution in our business over the next few years, which is why I mentioned kind of the campus approach. We're in discussions with Steel today about acquiring additional property that's next to the building.
So right now, your plans for that entire building is going to be a data center?
So the first 160 feet will be 4 floors of office space, right? So people can come in and do data, recovery type activities, and then the remaining, if you know the facility, how long it is, the remaining 800 feet will be for the installation of these kind of server farms, as you will.
I worked in that building about 15 years ago, and it's a massive building, with a massive basement.
It's the motor room?
Yeah, the only reason they've kept that building from demolition is because it has, the electrical gear that serves the rest of the facility. And we look at it today and think it would have been a shame to tear down that infrastructure. That
They're going into the basement and all.
Yeah, and we're not going to use the basement phase 1. Future phases, it's a potential because it's an asset. Just there's a lot of things you have to clean out in that basement, and we're just not going to tackle that in phase 1.
And again, just for people that at home who know the U.S. Steel facility and worked there for decades and decades, this is the old motor room.
Correct, right?
It is the old motor room.
Yeah, it's the old motor room that's just being talked about.
When we built the Dominion power plant, we used that to store all our equipment. So we were in and out of there a lot, and I know it's a huge building with that big crane in there, and I was in the basement once, and it's massive down there.
It's 5 feet. The foundations in the basement, some places are 5 feet thick, concrete. Oh. They don't build them like that anymore.
No, you see a lot of pictures around the room of that site being built, and it's hard to believe it's what's down there.
In 16 months, they built that site.
Can you give us an idea about the construction, how long it's going to be, when it would start if you were approved?
We got our demo permit today. We're in for that. So demolition, selective demolition, we expect will start within the next 7 days. And then we'll take a phased development approach towards completing the core shell of the building itself. And we expect we'll be done this year with the core shell. So that's a new roof, it's new siding, it's to rebuild what we call the east elevation, which is the side that joined the mill. It was never meant to be an outdoor or exterior wall, so that has to be rebuilt. And we will build out the first floor of offices, and we'll rough out the other 3 floors and finish those as customers come on and want actual space. So the envelope of the building will be complete this year. It's aggressive, but we feel pretty confident we can knock it out. And then the data center, will just be an evolving. It'll continue to grow over a period of years inside the facility.
Okay.
So this is dependent on you getting customers to actually buy your space. Is that what you're saying? To lease space. That's right. And the design allows us to buy the equipment that we need to support the customers as they sign. So it makes it it's a project that has a high degree of success because you don't have to go out and raise a lot of capital with the hope that a customer comes. You can actually procure what you need to support them as customers sign on. And there's I can take you through the marketing research, but we're in an underserved market within this particular region. Philadelphia region is a very underserved market.
Okay. All right, so I appreciate the rundown on the basic operations. With turning to the actual waivers and review letters, comments or questions from board members for the engineer or for the attorney for the project. Mr. Brasky?
No, I have nothing.
Mr. Dents?
None.
Mr. Rocco?
Mr. Sullivan, any issues?
I'd just like to clarify a few things. There are 3 waivers in the resolution listed. 19145C, requiring that no permanent structure be placed in an easement. That's one of the ones that was addressed. They are putting permanent structures within an easement. Number 2 is that street trees being provided where they don't exist. They are planting plenty of street trees, and as he mentioned, one of the areas of concern or that wasn't clear is the driveway, their access driveway. So they get a partial waiver from the requirement for street trees, and we're okay with what they are planning. And the third waiver was 19178C2, which was showing everything within 200 feet of the site, and that's a pretty typical waiver. What they don't need, and they did talk about, was a waiver of curbs. Curbs are only required if they are deemed necessary by the Board of Supervisors.
So it's not an actual waiver.
Right. I would assume that the Board of Supervisors is not going to deem curbs necessary along their access driveway.
No, not down there.
And there's also a provision in the resolution that says if you do want the curbs and they need to be waived, if you don't, then it's not a waiver.
Okay. In terms of, I didn't think the resolution didn't, I don't think, address the traffic study issue that that was brought up just a minute ago.
It did not.
And so that would be an additional waiver?
Yes, it would.
So we can, so when a motion is made, if we're going to amend, if we want to waive the traffic study, that'll be something we have to add in terms of, to the resolution.
Yes.
Anything else, Mr. Sullivan, from your perspective?
Not at this time. Thank you.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was fuzzy on a little bit of the waivers just because I knew they didn't necessarily match up with what was being said. So I appreciate you clearing that up. This would be preliminary and final land development. Do you see any issue with that, Mr. Sullivan?
Not at all. It's an existing structure. That's obviously not going to change.
Okay.
And all the stormwater issues we had, I think, have been talked about being resolved, and they've agreed to comply with all those. So I think we're okay, preliminary, final.
Okay. So, all right, any other comments or questions? Any public comment? See no hands. All right, so resolution 1426?
26.
All right, including a waiver from a traffic study. Pencil that in. That's what we're looking at this time. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 1426, including the traffic study waiver.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very
Good
much.
luck. Okay, item number 6 is a conditional use hearing for the County of Bucks, 8900 Old Bristol Pike. This is in reference to a co-location on an existing cell tower.
Mr. Harvey, we would need a motion to open the conditional use hearing.
Okay, is there a motion to open the conditional use hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. The applicant tonight is the County of Bucks, and this relates to tax parcel number 13-040-045-001 in the Township of Falls, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is an application requesting conditional use for a 12-foot extension to a 150-foot monopole for a police radio co-location for the County of Bucks on the property located at 8900 Old Route 13. The hearing has been duly advertised, and the applicant is represented by Mr. Thomas Hecker tonight. As discussed prior to this evening, Mr. Hecker will introduce his witnesses and summarize their testimony, and then make them available for board comment and questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Members of the board, good evening. Tom Hecker on behalf of the County of Bucks. As noted in the reading of the advertisement, we're here tonight for your consideration of a conditional use request. And just by way of brief background, several years ago, the FCC mandated the use of a narrower broadband. And as a result, the county has, for the last couple of years, been researching, planning, obtaining site control, and most recently appearing in different municipalities throughout Bucks County to obtain the necessary approvals. The good news about this application is that the site at 8900 Old Bristol Pike here in Falls Township is an existing tower where the county is already located. And basically all that we are doing in connection with this request is asking for the approval to replace the old equipment with the new equipment that will be compatible and compliant with the mandate by the federal government. So that's basically what this is all about. Tonight with me and behind me is Audrey Kenny, who is the Deputy 911 Director for the County of Bucks. Seated next to Audrey is Tom Olson, who is Project Manager with Motorola, who's supplying the equipment that the county is contracted with to meet this requirement. And Jack Doherty, who is the technical consultant with L.R. Kimball and Company, who basically has been qualifying or vetting all these different sites for consideration in connection with making this project work on a county-wide basis. And just so everybody is aware, it's a total of 24 radio sites, a couple of which are in Montgomery County, a couple of which are across the river in New Jersey, the majority of which are located here in Bucks County. It's a very significant, massive project, but much needed as a result of the, excuse me, the mandate by the federal government. The three witnesses that are here tonight are prepared to address any questions that the Board of Supervisors may have. We have received a review letter on this application from the Township Engineer relating to conditional use. I'm happy to go through that and provide on an item-by-item basis our response, as well as some documents to show how we meet the requirements. There will be the requirement at the conclusion to submit a revised plan to address a couple of the items in which there's been a request to add notes to the plan, which will certainly do that. So if you're okay with that, I'm happy to return to that letter. The review letter that I'm referencing is a letter of T&M dated August 18, 2014. It points out under the zoning ordinance some items that need to be addressed. The first item deals with the revision to the plan to provide details of the proposed antennas that demonstrate compliance with this section of the ordinance. That's obviously a will comply. This section of the ordinance states that the antenna size can't be any taller than 8 feet or wider than 13 inches. So that's an easy one, and we'll put that on the plan to verify our compliance with that. The second item deals with Section 209-50.2C8, requesting a note on the plan be added to the plan stating that the proposed communications antennas will not cause radio frequency interference with other communication facilities. That is, it will comply. That note will be added to the plan, and we don't anticipate there will be any interference. Obviously, it's an existing location. If for some reason a problem develops, then the note will indicate that the county will take whatever necessary steps there are to alleviate the interference with existing facilities. The next item is 209-50.2C11. Requiring us to demonstrate that the communications antenna must be located where it is proposed to provide safe and reliable services within the service area of the applicant. I have pre-marked as applicant's exhibit A1, which I'll supply to Mr. Clark. I have additional copies for the board that are not marked if you'd like the copies.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. No problem.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
This exhibit, if you look in the upper left-hand corner notes, and this deals with portable inbound on street. That means for inbound calls by a police officer on the street. You look at the map, and again, that map encompasses a portion of New Jersey and a portion of Montgomery County, eastern part of Montgomery County, primarily Bucks County. And I guess the most significant thing on this map is that you don't see any white spots. With the conclusion of this program, the white spots would represent gaps in coverage. So basically what we've done by using existing sites such as what we have here in Falls Township and acquiring the right to use new sites and replace it obviously with the equipment that we're now required to use, we've been able to demonstrate that there will not be any gaps in coverage. And we have diagrams such like this for within buildings, and we also have diagrams like this for outbound calls, and the results are pretty much the same. In all honesty, there's only one place where there still remains potentially some problem. It's up in Tinicum where the mountains are, but for the most part, we're in good shape there as well. But Falls Township, as you can see, we meet requirements and are able to provide the service that is anticipated to be provided as a result of this program. The next item states under section 209-50.2D2 that we need to provide evidence of the license for the owner or the operator, in this case the County of Bucks. I have pre-marked as applicant's exhibit A2 a copy of the license, the RF license, as well as the microwave license. I'll provide that to Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Cycle, Tom. Doesn't go in our landfill.
Do not be misled that the FCC has called this 8900 Old Route 13 address Tullytown. It is actually Falls Township. That is on the RF license. On the microwave license attached, notice they have it, well, it's closer. It says the Falls site instead of Falls, but this is, in fact, these are the licenses that exist for this location. So we think that requirement is met. The next item is simply addition of a note to the plans indicating that the communications tower proposed antenna will comply with all applicable standards established by the FCC governing human exposure to electromagnetic radiation. The answer to that is it will comply. There are no problems with that. We meet and exceed those requirements. The next item talks about the plans need to show the existing lightning rod with a reference to the height. That's a will comply. There's no problem with that. And the last item incorporates not only the requirement to submit the licenses, which we have done as applicant to Exhibit A2, but also the insurance that's in effect for this site, and we'll provide that to the township as well. As I indicated, I have witnesses here to verify anything that I have said. If the board has any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Mr. Hecker, you referenced witnesses. I'm not sure if you introduced them and had them sworn to verify what you said.
I can certainly do that. All rise. Okay. If you would please identify yourself first of all, and then the stenographer will swear you in. Audrey?
I'm Audrey Kenny, Deputy 911 Director for the county.
Tom?
I'm Tom Olson, I'm Project Director of Remote Role Solutions.
Jack?
And Jack Doherty, Senior Consultant, LRT.
Would you swear them in, please?
Do you all swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Audrey and gentlemen, you've heard what I have indicated to the Board of Supervisors, which is basically information that you have provided to me. Is what I said true and correct? And if I were to call you and ask you those questions, would your answers be consistent with what I advised the board? Okay, please correct. And I don't have any problem with that.
Our original plan called for a site in Montgomery County. We've since eliminated that site and added a different one in New Britain Township. That's the only change.
Thank you. I think Montgomery's still showing on that exhibit there. Okay. All right, thank you. That's all the questions we have, gentlemen.
Okay.
Let the other two confirm that they would answer that. If you, Mr. Hecker, if you could just ask your other two witnesses.
Same thing?
Same question.
Okay. That was a general question, but again, gentlemen, the statements that I made to the board, are each of you in agreement with that? And is there anything you want to correct or change at this point? Okay. Okay? All right.
All right. Okay. Comments or questions from board members, from Mr. Hecker or any of his witnesses?
No.
Yeah, real quick. So it's 150 feet now. It will go to 162?
Goes to 162 feet. That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
That's, and that is consistent with the prior zoning approval that was granted for that. Okay.
No, it's pretty simple.
Okay. Ms. Gallagher or Mr. Clark, any questions?
Not at this time, Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Sullivan, anything from you?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to close the conditional use hearing at this point.
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at a very straightforward plan. Quite frankly, there's not a whole lot to this, and obviously it's for a county service that all of us hopefully never have to use. But if we do have to use it, we want it to work,
Sure.
as best it can.
We already bought the radios.
Well, yeah, right. yeah. Any comments or questions from public? I didn't imagine it being here. All right, then, so we're looking at whether or not to grant conditional use approval to the County of Bucks for the additional antenna at 8900 Old Bristol Pike. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion to approve.
A second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Harvey, members of the board, can we have an executive session before we proceed to the next item?
Okay, all right, we'll take a short break. We'll call our meeting back to order. Mr. Clark, we have a summary of the executive session we had, please.
Yes, Mr. Harvey. During the executive session, the board consulted with myself and Ms. Gallagher on a legal interpretation related to item number 7, Superior Motor Service conditional use application, and also discussed potential litigation related to that application based on the board's decision moving forward. We've had the opportunity to discuss this issue with the applicant's attorney, Mr. Bradley, and he is taking a moment now to speak with his client, and I had suggested that perhaps we would jump to item number 8 while Mr. Bradley and his client consult with each other, and Mr. Bradley agreed that that probably made sense.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move then to agenda item 8. We'll come back to 7. And item number 8 is another conditional use hearing for Better Homes Hearth and Patio, which is 386 Lincoln Highway. And I'll entertain a motion to open the conditional use hearing.
So moved.
Seconded?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Ms. Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. The applicant in front of the board tonight is Peter Stilitano, doing business as Better Homes Hearth and Patio. It's regarding a property located at tax parcel number 13-008-005 in the Township of Falls, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is an application requesting conditional use to allow the replacement of an existing two-sided sign with a new two-sided digital sign on the property located at 386 Lincoln Highway. The hearing was duly advertised, and the applicant is here on behalf of himself this evening. Mr. Stilitano, if you can...
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I guess as everyone knows, I'm probably one of the pioneers for digital signs in the township. Recently met
Mr.
with the
Stilitano, before you continue, I'm just going to ask the court reporter to swear you in.
Oh, sure.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I assume everyone has the plan and the pictures. You may notice that we went from a complete sign of all digital to a, I'm calling it a half and half for the lack of a better term, so that our name is always prominent, okay, and the lower portion will be where we can put our messages. T&M, we have received a letter regarding the conditional use application, and basically it says all elements of the proposed digital sign should conform to the requirements, outlined in this section, which we obviously agree to. And we also received a letter from Remington and Vernick regarding the possibility of a traffic study, which they indicated a traffic study would not be necessary. We feel the sign would be a great addition. I also think it would be, I guess the word is a beautiful addition. I think it's going to make the front of our property look better, and I think the sign will be very helpful in improving our business as well. I'm ready for questions.
Okay. All right, comments or questions from board members for Mr. Stilitano? Mr. Raski?
Yeah, I need a minute.
Okay. Mr. Dents?
No, it's straightforward. Looks like a nice sign.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, it looks like a nice sign. Is it the same size as the existing?
Yes, it is. It's about, I'm sorry, variance-wise, it's about a 6 inches different, 3 inches here, 3 inches there.
Okay, thank you.
And you're only using a sign for your business, right?
Yes.
And obviously, I think you already stated this, but pending approval of this, anything you put on the digital portion of the sign would meet the ordinances that we have for digital signage in Falls Township.
Yes, it would. And additionally, at the Planning Commission, we discussed that any messages would only pertain to our business products that we sell or what have you.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Ms. Gallagher or Mr. Clark, anything?
None.
None.
This will be the first sign that'll be approved since we changed the ordinance?
Yes.
It'll be the second LED sign in Falls Township.
No.
Correct.
No?
No.
Well, second approved, one would be at,
There's one at the high school.
Yeah.
There's one at isn't there one at the firehouse, too?
yeah, yes, there
There's
is.
one at the gas station
Yeah.
on New Falls.
Okay.
It is the first since we altered the ordinance.
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Sullivan, anything from you?
Not at this time, thank you.
No. Okay. And I have nothing else. Public comment? See no hands. Is there a motion then to close the conditional use hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Ms. Gallagher, can you explain the reason we have a conditional use for these signs? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. Go ahead. Ms. Gallagher?
Sure.
Seems a bit much for this example, but there's a reason why.
There is a reason why. Previously, as you'd referenced, there was an LED sign that went in at the bowling alley that was unrestricted and therefore caused some problems. So what we did is we took a look at the existing code, which prohibited all LED signs in the township, which we were not permitted to do. We did create several zoning districts that permit LED signs by right, but the highway commercial district, which this property is located in reviewing this, the board and we felt that, and township staff felt that conditional use was more appropriate in this particular zoning district. It requires each applicant to come in front of the board and meet certain requirements as are outlined in the conditional uses section of the township code.
Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
All right. I have no other questions. Is there a motion then to approve the conditional use for a new sign, partly LED, at Better Homes Hearth and Patio, 386 Lincoln Highway?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
I will second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I see the applicant for going back to agenda item 7. The applicant and his attorney from Superior Motor Service have come back. I didn't know if there was. You want to proceed? Okay. All right, so we'll conditional use hearing for Superior Motor Service Incorporated, which is 218 Lincoln Highway. We'll entertain a motion to open the conditional use hearing.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Ms. Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. The applicant in front of the board tonight is Superior Motor Service Incorporated. The property is tax map parcel 13-007-006 in the Township of Falls, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is an application requesting conditional use for the sale of used vehicles other than by an authorized factory dealer on the property located at 218 Lincoln Highway. The applicant is represented by Michael Bradley. Mr. Bradley, you may proceed.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Michael Bradley. I represent James McCoy, who is to my left, and also Superior Motor Services, which is his business, which is located at the old Graver Lumber property, which is 218 Lincoln Highway. We are requesting tonight a conditional use in order to allow a used car lot to be placed on the property. And Mr. McCoy wishes to address the board.
Mr. McCoy is going to be sworn.
Yeah, sorry to be sworn.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, nothing but the truth?
Morning, gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I guess what I wanted to say is pretty much that, we took over the Graver property a few years back, and we're improving the property. We have been improving the property and trying to basically make it a nice, not a nice one, a nice place to look at. Excuse me, mind me of throat. I'm a little under the weather. And at this time, a couple years back, when we opened the property up from Graver Lumber Company, purchased it to do automotive repair. Excuse me, towing and storage for Falls Township for our police tow and other municipalities that we tow for. We, at this point now, have advanced up a little bit, and the business is building, and that's why we're asking for this variance and the relief to open up this small used car dealership. So I'm open for questions or anything that you might have. I don't know what else.
Okay.
The request essentially is to move, there's an existing fence on the right side of the property, which has an open enclosure. Part is to move that back from where it is now to where the end of the building is. And in that saved space, there would be a repainting of lines to allow for the parking of cars that are for sale. Mr. McCoy will comply with all the PennDOT regulations with regards to having a used car lot. There will be concrete wheel blocks at the front of the property. There will also be ballast along the line to designate the cars that are for sale. And they will also be blocked off so they cannot be driven on and off without some effect being done to move the fencing in order to do so. So we're not looking to change anything in regards to the property. We are looking just to move back that fence and to do some repainting of parking spaces.
Okay. All right.
And board members, just to interject, as Mr. McCoy may have misspoke when he said a variance. As you know, this is a conditional use hearing. Our ordinance does not permit sale of used vehicles on this property unless by a factory authorized dealer. I know this is an issue that has come up a few times in the last several years. This original restriction, we believe, was to probably prevent the spread of too many just random used car lots. The point of making it from a factory authorized dealer that you didn't mind if a Pontiac dealership was selling used cars, you just didn't want standalone used car dealerships. So that's the reason why there is a requirement for conditional use at this property. The other issues that Mr. Bradley has mentioned regarding where the property is relocated, bollards and things of that nature. I think that is what they have proposed. I think that is what zoning has talked about. And that is, as part of the conditional use process, the board is allowed to impose those conditions for their use of the property for sale of used vehicles. And as you recall, Mr. McCoy has been here previously. And we did place certain restrictions on the use of the property, backup beepers. We didn't remember because the back of his property was going to be storing vehicles. Right, we put that white line and things along those lines. So that was a condition that the board had placed on it, allowing Mr. McCoy to use the property the way he had requested at that time. So that is essentially what you have in front of you right now.
Okay. Comments or questions for Mr. Bradley or Mr. McCoy? Mr. Boraski?
Yeah, I'll start with the setback. 5 foot, the variance that you were granted from zoning hearing board, to me is unacceptable. You know, if you guys are willing to compromise, I think we need to come up with where the line will be, but I won't accept nothing less than 10 foot myself.
Now, we're talking about, not to cut Mr. Boraski off, but when we look at the drawing, there was a confusion over what line we were actually talking about.
Right.
So we don't have the drawing in front of us, do we?
Right-of-way line, the property, there is, well, you probably have it on there.
Yeah, I don't have it on.
And in my brief conversation with Mr. Bradley, I think Mr. Bradley and Mr. McCoy are under the impression that the 5 foot is from the property line, and Mr. Bradley believes that the property line and the right-of-way line are the same. Mr. Sullivan hasn't been able to confirm that yet, but that is one issue that we will need to confirm. I think it will be 5 feet from the right-of-way line, and if the right-of-way line is further back than the property line, the applicant will need to comply with that. If the property and the right-of-way line are the same, then that's where the 5 feet would begin.
The line we're talking about is the dotted line here, right? Does everybody agree to that?
We
Is that what we're
believe,
talking about?
yes.
Right.
Okay. That's where the confusion.
But that's
to me-
the property line. We're not sure where the right-of-way line is. And
That's the 5 foot we're talking about, though.
Correct.
Just so we're clear.
Right, so we have an option where you have about, how many parking blocks are there, about 30?
Right here?
15? Right.
5.
Not even.
No.
All the way
How many
across.
total cars? You said small, like 17, was it?
It was, I'm sorry.
Take all the way across the front of his property.
They agreed with 17 vehicles.
12, 11 or 12?
I don't have an issue with Mr. Borowski's
10 foot back from there?
10-foot setback from the easement or the line, depending on where it is with the study that they have to do through the engineer. I don't have an issue with that. Opposed to that, or On top of that, additionally on that, at 5 foot, if we go another 5 and make it 10, there is going to be steel pylons, safety chain, and parking ballards on that line. So essentially, no vehicle will be parked directly up against that 10-foot margin. I would imagine you'd have another 2 to 3 feet in between those as well. So now you're talking about 13 feet. I'm not making it official 13, but I'm saying I can go an extra 5 off the 5, and it gives you an idea.
Yeah.
Mr. Rocco, 17 it would be the number of,
Yeah.
number of cars at any one time.
So you're saying 10 feet from that line that we just talked about is with the number you're throwing out?
See, it's hard because we don't know if that line backs up.
We're saying this line, that's the line we're saying.
But
Right, and I
we
think
we
we're
might
gonna
not
save
be
it all
saying,
as parking
we
lot.
might not be saying that line. That's the property line, and I think Mr. Bradley and I discussed in the back. If the property line and the right-of-way line are the same, then it will be 10 feet from that line. But I think Mr. Bradley agrees it's 10 feet from the right-of-way line. So if the right-of-way line is further back from the property line, it can't be closer to
Okay, so it's
the
not going to
street.
be closer, that's better.
It cannot be closer.
We're
The
clear now.
right-of-way line cannot be closer than the property line.
So Mr. Sullivan, is there a chance that that right-of-way could be up to his front door?
No. No, it won't be up to the front door.
All right,
I mean, there's
okay.
there's a slight chance that the right-of-way line may be a couple feet farther into the site than what's shown on this plan. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the property line, right-of-way line will probably coincide.
So when you guys were in front of Planning Commission, did you discuss the bollards and the chains and those items?
We did, yes. They're on the plan. So, and the chains part, that's actually a PennDOT requirement for a used car. So we will comply with all those conditions as well, too.
It'll be the bollards with the chains between them and parking blocks.
Yes.
I'm okay.
Mr. Dents?
No, that's it, I'm fine.
Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, I
It's
think,
just very confusing.
yeah, that was some of the issue that we were having. Where does the line start and end? I think you've done a nice job with the property, so it looks nice. There was some concern, I think, with the safety of the bollards and the parking blocks, so if you're willing to move them back, I'd probably favor it. I think there was one other issue as well.
There is, and as I discussed with Mr. Bradley, there is not a traffic engineer's review letter has not been completed as of yet. Obviously, any condition, as always is in a conditional use hearing, would be that you comply with the traffic engineer's review letter. We realize that you and your client are at a bit of a disadvantage because you don't have this letter in front of you. Mr. Sullivan believes he can turn this letter around in approximately a week. So if the board votes on your approval tonight, one of the conditions will be that you comply with the traffic engineer's review letter.
That's fine,
Okay.
Mr. Clark.
I want to echo, it's fine. No, I want to echo Mr. Rocco's comments. I appreciate, it was Graver lumber that had been there for a while, and it's a shame to see it go. I appreciate the work you put into the building. I appreciate the work you do there. Myself, notwithstanding even the issues with safety, I'm not in favor of granting a conditional use for this property. I feel as if, the business you have there now, as I said, you do very well with, and I wish you the best of luck with. I don't see a reason to necessarily add or change things around just so you could have a used car lot as well as everything else. One of the things I did want to kind of address, I don't know if you have the April 15th, 2014 review letter from T&M. There was a couple issues raised, for me. One of them was the very first paragraph that's listed here under the zoning ordinance talks about improvements to the front yard and driveway that was supposed to be back in 2012, and it didn't. There's a question about whether or not they've been done yet. I don't know if that with this.
I can answer that. The original plan was to put a flower box planters. Actually, let me back up a half step. The driveway on both sides, left and right, if you're looking at the front of the building from Route 1, the left side had a 40-foot opening that contingent upon us closing that gap up originally when we purchased the property. and the right side where we're proposing the car lot has a 100-foot opening. The original plan was to use the flower planter boxes to close up the driveways and then stripe the parking lot, which the striping has been done 50% of the front where the handicap parking is for our customers in the front of the building. And we also, instead of putting the flower boxes in, we actually changed it up a little bit, and we put the parking ballards across the front. So if you drive down Route 1 right now, you will see 35 parking blocks that are parked out, that are on the front of the property, which has closed up the left side to 15 feet as requested by the township. If we get our
Conditional use.
we get our conditional use, I apologize.
Sorry.
The parking ballards and the chains, the safety chains, will close up an additional 65 feet on the opening of the 100-foot opening that the township was concerned about. So that will take care of the flower boxes and the driveway closure as we so said it back in 2012.
Okay.
The idea was to close the driveway up because they were worried about traffic patterns in and out. It was too big and too open. So that was the idea, was to put the parking ballards in to close everything down, to close it up.
Okay. All right. Let's see.
Oh, let me add one more thing.
Sure.
I do apologize. If this is all done, there will be an in and out striping on the driveway to show traffic in and traffic out pattern in that 35 feet that will be the original, the mandatory driveway into the complex.
Okay.
Where will your customers park for the lot? Behind the fence?
We have parking spots out front.
Yeah,
To the left
to the left,
of
yeah.
the front door, there's approximately 30. There's an additional 8 out front, including handicap. Around the back of the building, there's handicap parking as well at the back door, and 2 parking spots there. And to the left side of the fence, there's approximately 40 parking spots that are all striped and in place now with lights and surveillance and everything. So there's approximately 70 parking spaces on the property.
Okay.
So I think we're more than adequate on parking.
What about lighting that new lot? Will you be putting lights up to light it at night?
I haven't gotten a lot up there to see what it's going to look like at night, but we do have ample lighting on the sign out front and on the corner of the building that lights up the front of the property if you drive by at night. And if we have to add a light, obviously we'll come back and ask for approval to do that.
Yeah. What are your operating hours for the?
It would be the same as our regular business hours. I keep no intent on keeping open past 6 o'clock. So we're 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Occasionally, we're there until 6 o'clock, but the actual business is shut down at 5. Towing operates up in 24 hours a day, obviously.
Yeah.
But the actual building will be closed at 5, Monday through Friday, and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Okay.
Just one more question.
Go ahead.
so.
Sure.
While we're talking about a light, Mr. Clark, will they need to come back if they want to add a light on the property? Because, I mean, I kind of would agree with Mr. Dents. I mean, I think you guys may need it. If, you want to show off some of your cars.
Does he need
Mr. Clark?
relief for a light?
Does he have to come before us to put a light up?
The LED?
It's not.
No, we're not talking about a sign, we're talking about a light.
No, it's not a matter we've looked at, but we don't believe that he would need to. We believe that would probably just be a regular permit.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up.
That light would comply with, it would flow into the lot, not disturb neighbors or the street. Because that was something that came up in 2012 as well, too. Obviously, they'll be directional, so they'll be directed onto that lot and on that lot only. It won't disrupt the neighbors or drivers going down Lincoln Highway.
So how do we determine if a light is necessary? What is our?
You're talking about requiring a light?
Yeah.
I would think they would determine if they thought it was necessary, and then there are certain mounting heights that they can't exceed for that kind of light. And there's also off-site glare issues that have to be looked at when they applied for their permit.
Well, for anything, it would be for security if the business is only open until 6 o'clock at night.
The zoning relief that they were granted back in March indicates that the hours of operations for the auto sales shall be Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So they do have approval through zoning to stay open through 9 p.m., but Mr. McCoy is indicating now that it is only until 6 p.m. Again, if you make that a condition of the approval and the applicant complies, then that changes, and then they don't have approval to stay open until 9. They would only have approval to stay open until 6.
I don't so much of a problem with either one. I was just, I don't know, getting confused again. It needs to be lit up, obviously, if he needs to
But
light
if
it
their
up.
hours
that's his
are, if their
decision.
hours of operation according to zoning hearing board are 9 PM, your review letter will be looking for lighting, correct?
I imagine it would, yes.
That's easy enough.
Good.
Other comments or questions from the solicitors?
There is. Based on the comments from Mr. McCoy, one of the comments from the previous, or one of the conditions of the previous conditional use approval dealt with site and entrance improvements shown on the prior plan. It's a comment in Mr. Sullivan's review letter. I think what we heard Mr. McCoy saying is they're going to change that to what is on the existing plan, or is this in addition to what they're showing on the new plan?
I think we need clarification as to what you meant by radius is coming into the site as your main entrance.
The original striping plan that we had is the same striping plan that we're using. All we're doing is closing up a portion of the driveway with the car dealership. So the striping plan that you have originally on our original plan from 2000, I believe it was 12.
Right.
Shows the stripes in and out, and it also shows the stripes in all the parking spaces behind the fence. That will be consistent. We will go off of those plans for that same. The driveway's not moving at all. The driveway's still the same driveway. We're just shortening it up because it's open 100 feet wide right now. We need to shrink it down. So the striping goes in on the main driveway in the 35-foot marker. It's on the plan, and we'll.
Well, the latest plan will probably have to be revised to show that information, so that
Okay.
it can be enforced.
The only thing I think we need is clarification regarding the hours of operation, because that's the only thing that there seems to be a little confusion right now. Zoning gives them 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Mr. McCoy has said 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. It just is going to need to be a condition either way. So whatever Mr. McCoy, whatever the board and Mr. McCoy can discuss here.
I was only talking about the hours for lighting. I don't care how late he's open.
Well, I would like to just add in now, I mean, this is something new for us, as it was the building and the business when we started. And things tend to grow and things tend to change. So I don't want to lock myself at 5 to 6 p.m. If every other dealership on Route 1 is open until 9, I would like the availability to have that same time frame. And I'm not looking for midnight sales. But I do want the option if a customer comes in at 6 o'clock and wants to buy a car, it takes a couple hours to get the deal done, that I'm not limited till 6 o'clock and gonna get a fine or something if they're not off the property by then. So I'd like to keep that 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. open if I could.
Yeah, we'll just make sure there's.
It will be
sufficient
one of the conditions listed in the conditional use approval letter if the board approves this. If I just could, Mr. Harvey. So, Mr. Bradley, on behalf of your client, you're agreeing to a 10-foot setback from the right-of-way line?
Yes.
You're agreeing that you will comply with the engineer's traffic review letter to be completed by T&M engineers?
Yes.
You're agreeing to comply with the T&M review letter of August 15th, 2014?
Yes.
And you're agreeing that your hours of operation will be 8 a.m. to 9 p.m.?
Yes.
And you're agreeing to comply with the Township Fire Marshal needs to be consulted regarding the adequacy of access and circulation for firefighting equipment and other emergency vehicles?
Yes.
And you're agreeing to comply with all of the other relevant sections of the township ordinances and codes?
Yes.
Okay. Public comment is after the closing of the conditional use, correct?
Unless a party requests party status, and you may ask if anyone is seeking party status in this hearing.
Okay. Any further comment or questions?
No.
Is there anyone wishing party status for this hearing? Okay, and we'll take a motion to close the conditional use hearing.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Is there just any kind of regular public comment without party status? I see one hand motion to open public comment.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Mr. Binney?
Good evening. As Mr. Clark pointed out, the reason we have a conditional use is so that we can stop the proliferation of used car lots on Route 1. We see how well that's worked. I do agree with Mr. Harvey that I don't think it's necessary here. They have a functioning business. Mr. McCoy indicated that things change. He's asking for 17 cars now. I think later on he's going to be back and want to expand it. Just because the business goes well, that's what you do. I'd like to point out that with the exception of the Smart truck and the Hertz rental car, every other used car lot on Route 1 has a physical separation, curbing, grass, some barrier like that to separate it from the road. I know in the past we've enforced setback issues on Route 1 with other used car lots up and down, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to give this gentleman relief that we're enforcing on everybody else. I think it's troublesome that they haven't done the previous conditions that were placed on them for 2 years. They weren't completed until they're running around now trying to do them because they're here again asking for something. So I don't think it's appropriate. The question about the right-of-way line was asked at the Planning Commission. Nobody could give us an answer. I appreciate the fact that you guys are working to push it back and get 10 feet, but I still think there should be other barriers there, and I really don't think it's necessary to use that location.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Mr. Trimble.
I don't know whether I'm repeating anything that Mr. Benny said or not, but I think we have enough used car lots on Route 1 in Falls Township. There's plenty of empty spaces. And just from your discussion on what exactly is going to transpire at the property, if you're even considering it, get some site plans in here so you know exactly what we're doing. I mean, just in what I could hear, there was too many questions. But bottom line is, with all the empty used car lots, they're all over the place. That's all.
And board members, just so the record is clear, the board and the professional staff have been provided with site plans. The site plans that were used at zoning and then were used again at the Planning Commission, we've had them and we've had the opportunity to review them. And some of the discussions we had with Mr. Bradley during the break were about a couple of questions regarding the site plan, but they're all being taken care of with the engineer's traffic review letter.
Any other public comment? See no hands, or a motion to close public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Does this condition, this use, does it live the life of the property? Meaning.
Yes, this stays with the property. It's not with the applicant. It's with the property.
Okay.
And we've explored this before, Mr. Rocco, in some prior discussions regarding other properties about whether or not we can limit it, and it goes with the property.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. If not, the chair will entertain a motion regarding this conditional use application.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Okay.
And that approval includes the conditions that I've went over with Mr. Bradley.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. So, okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Best of luck. All right, moving to item number 9, which is a sketch plan presentation on the former Acme property, which is located at West Trenton Avenue and Pine Grove Road. Let's see, Mr. Hecker is here.
Double dipping tonight.
Yeah.
Here again.
And just for sake of reminding people, sketch plans are essentially, they are not things that the township votes on, the Board of Supervisors votes on. This is simply a chance for an applicant to present conceptual plans for some piece of property or some project. Gives us a chance to see them, gives the public a chance to see them, they will eventually have to come back if the project moves forward for preliminary and then final land development. So, Mr. Hacker.
Thank you. Absolutely correct. Just by way of a little background with regard to this site, I don't think it's any secret to a lot of people that there's been interest in developing, or I should say redeveloping, the property, which is the subject of this application, for use as a Wawa convenience facility and pharmacy. We began examining this property several months ago with that end in mind, and before we could get too far with it, the property was placed under agreement, and the intended use was going to be for a medical office building. Apparently that due diligence for that use led to the conclusion that it was not going to make it as a medical office building, and that buyer dropped the agreement of sale. My client, Tom Verrecchio, on behalf of, there he is, on behalf of Buckingham Retail Property, was interested in it initially and followed it very closely. And as soon as it was determined that it was not going to proceed as a medical office building, Tom was able to get it under agreement. And we thought it would be appropriate to come in before we get too far down the road with this thing as a courtesy to the Board of Supervisors, because we have filed an application to the Zoning Hearing Board, because in typical redevelopment, this redevelopment plan is going to require some zoning relief for the proposed use. And we elected to move forward with that application because of the tight time constraints and the due diligence period, and we wanted to make sure that we were getting some indication as to the acceptability of this plan during the due diligence period. So tonight, we are now currently scheduled to proceed with the Zoning Hearing Board at their next meeting on the application. Fortunate enough that we had the time to come in before the board to give you first crack at the plan, and happy to hear whatever comments, questions or concerns that you have about it. And we have all the folks here to address those issues. With me, I pointed to Tom before, but Tom is a developer engaged by Wawa generally for a lot of locations, and particularly for this location. Immediately behind me is Eric Britz. Eric is a civil engineering consultant with Bowler Engineering, who's worked on numerous Wawa applications. Mike Riddell is here from Wawa. Mike is a Wawa representative employed by Wawa, has all the information about Wawa operations and site plans. So we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. What we thought we'd do is have Eric give the board a brief overview of the plan. It's a multi-use proposal, not just a Wawa, but a pharmacy and a small restaurant. So we'll get into that, and we will highlight for you some of the zoning issues we've identified and we'll be addressing. We anticipate that once we get past that point, we'll be able to work on any of the other issues that Township may have, in particular stormwater management, those kinds of things, and we'll work closely with the Township engineer to satisfy those concerns. So with that longer than what I anticipated background, I'd like to introduce Eric Britz from Bowler. Eric will go over the plan with you.
Good evening. The site that we're looking at is the old Acme site. It's located on the southwest corner of West Trenton Road and Pine Grove Road. The old Acme was the building that's there today. It's about 47,000 square feet. We're proposing to tear that down and construct 3 new uses, a Wawa, Rite Aid, and a fast food restaurant, totaling approximately about 25,000 square feet. The entirety of the development, the paved impervious surface, will just about be entirely within what's currently paved today. In fact, we're going to be opening up a lot more green areas on the property, totaling more than 20% of the site will be more green than what it is today. In fact, even if you add in the improvements that we're looking on the roads, we're right at about 20%. With the 3 uses, obviously, we're going to need to come in for conditional use for the drive-in restaurant. and also for fuel sales, as well as, land development, preliminary and final land development. The site is part of the development, obviously, with all the new green spaces that we're proposing. We're looking to improve on the buffering that's out there today, the landscaping, the lighting. We're going to go with all LED lighting. Stormwater management, we intend to meet all the township and the current state and local county regulations with some improvements to the stormwater. We do want to use a lot of the existing stormwater conveyance that's out there in an effort to just save from being wasteful and try to just reuse what's out there, but at the same time add some infiltration facilities to improve the stormwater that's coming off the site today. Like I said, we have some conditional uses approvals that we're going to be seeking, one for the drive-in restaurant and one for the fuel sales, as well as for the LED lighting for the gas prices for the Wawa. And we also have some variances. I guess I'll go through those variances, Tom.
Would the board like us to review the variance request?
Just real quickly, we have plans in front of us, obviously, but for the people that are looking at home, if you wouldn't mind, make sure you take the microphone with you. People looking are going to see 3 stores. They don't necessarily know which one's which from, seeing it at home, where you have sort of ingress and egress and those types of things.
Okay, at the hard corner, you have the Wawa store with gas. In the middle is the Rite Aid pharmacy, and on the far end is the fast food.
And Pine Grove, Route 13.
All facing Route 13.
Yeah, Pine Grove is on the bottom, right? Okay.
Pine Grove is at the bottom of the plan here.
Right.
And West Trenton Road is here.
Okay.
We're proposing to maintain the existing access point on West Trenton Ave, and then propose a right-in only into the Wawa pad, and then a full access intersection at Pine Grove Road in between the Rite Aid and the fast food.
And a traffic light at that spot.
Yeah.
Has that been approved by PennDOT?
PennDOT's looking at it as we speak. We're negotiating with them, working with them.
Now, where does that light line up to the current building? Just out of curiosity.
The current Acme?
The current Acme, yeah.
How far down Route 13, you mean?
Yeah. You have an idea how far out? Where would the front of the current Acme be?
Yeah.
Kind of near the back of the existing building. The existing building is the back of the existing building is sitting right about in this location.
Okay.
In between the Rite Aid and the fast food.
Okay. Okay. What's the pleasure of the board in terms of hearing the kind of variances? Is that?
I think so. I don't need to hear them.
Yeah, we're going to hear them, like you said, unless you think the people, it looks like there's 11.
11 variances, is that right?
Yes, which is a combination of dimensional and some signage relief, and again, for 3 users. And the dimensional relief primarily results from our wanting to pull the buildings toward Pine Grove Road and provide buffering from the residential area that's on the opposite side of West Trenton Avenue. So, but yeah, the setback relief primarily, and
selling gas.
Signage relief constitutes most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's conditional use of selling gas.
How many pumps are you planning on building?
What are we showing? 6.
6, that's it? I thought you guys only built like, I don't know, 12, 15?
We build what will work for the site, and I'm sure Wawa believes that this site can be successful with the 6 pumps.
Okay.
Does Wawa offer diesel?
What's that? Yes. Mike, come on up here. This is Mike Riddell.
There's Wawa. Hey.
Hello.
Mike is the Wawa representative.
Good evening. Yes. So we typically do either 6 or 8 MPDs, and each MPD has 2 fueling positions. So there's 12 fueling positions.
There's 12 here?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes more sense.
6 actual.
So
No diesel.
each pump serves a car on each side.
Okay.
So no diesel?
Yes, and diesel will be available at each
Perfect.
pump. Yeah. But it's auto diesel, so we're selling to light-duty trucks, cars, not tractor trailers.
So the plan right now, and this is basically what they call super Wawa, I suppose, right? It's basically or you're getting away from that term, or what's the?
Yeah, no, that's fine. The term's out there enough, but that's fine. We can use that term. So I can tell you, yeah, prototype. So I'm working on. I've been with Wawa for 16 years. I'm working on about 50 locations right now, but this is mine. So everybody has their Wawa. I live like within a mile of here in Lower Makefield Township. I come through the intersection every day. So to Falls Township's benefit, I'm going to make sure it has all the bells and whistles. This is our prototype building. It's a W50 tower front back is what we call it. The store will have an entrance on the front and the back, very similar to the store right here down the road. The canopy will be of a peaked type rather than the sloped. A reason for that is because of the residents just across West Trenton Avenue, rather than having that sloped canopy and the lighting projecting in that direction, we'll have a peak that'll help contain the lighting underneath the canopy. The building will have a stone base around it and then brick above. So we think it's our most attractive building. When I said the prototype is a tower, which it's a little different than the store right down here. We'll have renderings when we come back to show you the store, but it is our most up-to-date building.
Where are the canopies going to be located? Is there two canopies?
There's one canopy.
Oh, there's one canopy.
On the Route 13 side, right? On Pine Grove side?
Oh, right here?
And these are the MPDs, the pumps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Fueling positions on either side. Signage will be pretty minimal, actually, for 3 uses. There will be a sign, one here and one here at each of the main entrances.
Okay.
It'll be 24-hour operation, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
So is there any truth that Wawa is going to consider putting in like seating so you can eat in? That was a rumor I heard. Just curious.
So we are looking at doing that, not seating inside. So all of our Florida stores have seating outside. We have a large porch in the front, and it's been very successful down there. As you can imagine, in Florida, you can sit out there all year long.
Right.
So we're talking about bringing that up here as well. I don't think we're proposing it right now at this location, but we will provide the space so that if in the future we decide to roll it out everywhere, that we'll have the room to do that.
Okay. How about technology advancements? Anything new there? App, drive-in, something?
Yes. So right now we're no drive-ins. We're testing a loyalty program very similar to like a Starbucks. I don't know if you have an app. You can scan and charge to your app. The associates are testing that right now through the end of the year. If it's successful, we're going to roll it out to the public next year.
How many Wawas are there?
It's a drive-through.
These are all the questions I've always wanted to know. I don't know why. But.
So go on Wawa.com and you can find out answers to a lot of general questions. But we have over 600 stores in 6 states, 5 states here: Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. And then in Florida, we opened up our first store in July of 2012. We're opening about a store a week in all 6 states. And
store a week.
Yeah, so that's why I can't give you an exact number, because as soon as I know a number, it changes.
It'll change on you.
Yeah, well, by 6 every week.
So is it Wawa's intention to close any of the other local Wawas?
No.
When this opens?
No, so we have the store we call Morrisville, which, and then Yardley in town, and then the store here are the 3 closest.
One at Penn Valley Road and...
Yeah, exactly. No, they're all 3 very good stores, and we don't think they're going to be impacted. They might take a little hit, each one, but that's okay. We think this is a part of the market that's not served.
What's the risk if you don't get approval from PennDOT? Or that's not an option?
There's tremendous, Wawa, we need that access.
You need that, I'm sure
we
you
need
do.
that access. Otherwise, getting all the traffic off of Pine Grove Road, which is 13, to come around through the intersection back in and then back out again. It's just problematic, and it's, you know, we're a convenience store, so
Wouldn't be very convenient.
Yeah, it needs to be
Let
convenient.
alone a
right.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know, you know, we know this, but just, well, at least unless it's changed recently, you have the Rite Aid, which I guess is sort of, that's your partner, you're locked into them. They're definitely in this mix if it happens?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
they are in the mix right now.
And the fast food restaurant that you're building, you know, what we've been told, and again, I'm assuming it hasn't changed, is that you don't have anybody for that right
Correct.
now? Okay. All right, so I'm sure people will ask what kind of fast food, and it's, you know, it's a logical question. I just wanted to put that out there.
It won't be Wendy's.
No.
Right now.
They just redid the-
renovated, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's
right.
nice.
My son asks every day.
So you made a reference to traffic, and obviously, you know, we know that we're happy to see any vacant site find new life.
Certainly.
Okay, so we're grateful for that. However, you know, traffic, we think, is going to be the biggest, you know, hurdle for this project.
So I could tell you from a Wawa standpoint, we're a pass-by user for the most part. The traffic's already on the roadway. I can't speak to Rite Aid. I'm the Wawa guy. So most towns like us because from a traffic perspective because of that. You know, I go through that intersection 2 to 4 times a day, and you know, from that, you know, once the store's there, if it is approved, you know, I'm already driving by it. I'm not going to make too many special trips to the intersection.
Right.
It would be a special trip for me, and I live about a mile.
Yeah, and it'd definitely be more cars
you,
turning
right?
in. Yeah, more cars turning in, turning off. I mean, I think, you know, just not to sort of bash neighboring, you know, municipalities, but you referenced the Wawa down the street, which is just a nightmare in terms of traffic.
Middletown, yeah.
In Middletown.
I agree.
And the two in Bristol Township, one at Route 13 and Green Lane, which is not as bad, but still pretty tough. And the one they're currently building right near Egan and the tech school on New Falls Road and Worcester Road, which, you know, for a long time, Bristol Township boards refused to build it there just because they knew it would be a traffic nightmare, especially with buses going by multiple times a day. And I think it's going to be a bad thing. That's obviously, and you know, not that you have any connection to that, if you do or not, I'm just absolving you of that, and you, Mr. Hecker.
Thank you.
But just, you know, we're yeah, that's obviously a major concern. We don't want to create a problem where there isn't one. So that, I mean, as much again as we like to see redevelopment, that is a concern of ours.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because I know buses, my son goes that way to school. Is Pennsbury notified, or PennDOT just determines that it's not going to be an issue, and
Who knows?
who knows?
Yeah,
but
who knows what
you don't
PennDOT
know
does?
what PennDOT does.
Our manager is one of your best customers.
When we heard about his addiction to Wawa coffee,
Yes,
we
yeah,
knew that this
and
was the
yeah,
right
and
location.
Hoagie-
Probably knows your memory.
Hoagie Fest and
And Bob, if I can just follow up on your comments, we understand the traffic concerns. You know, there's very few busy intersections in this county where there aren't those same kinds of concerns.
Sure.
So we're spending a lot of preliminary time exploring those issues now with PennDOT, and if the project moves forward, and we sure hope it does, we are prepared to come in, you know, with a full traffic study and demonstrate to you the nature and the extent of the improvements, and hopefully PennDOT's willingness to allow that cut onto a Pine Grove Road, which we think will add significant improvement to the operation of this facility.
What is the timing on this?
Well, sooner the better. My client is in a due diligence right now under the agreement of sale, and that's why we're moving forward with the zoning to make sure we can do that. Our due diligence also includes the traffic issues that we're addressing, and of course, then we've got to we get through both of those, and we'll be filing full land development plans, and I'll be asking for preliminary and final approval, which will help expedite things. But I mean, realistically, Tom, you know, next year sometime. Next spring or summer, April, May of next year.
Does that include all three, or just a Wawa?
Wawa would be first, all three, you're going to do, okay, all three. And I might add, by the way, when we were talking about the architecture, Tom has been able to obtain a commitment from Rite Aid to do something significant with the architecture, which will be consistent with what Wawa has agreed to do. So at the end of the day, we think it's going to look really good. And we don't have that third user, but that'll be an easy one to also steer in that direction.
Sure. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No, I did want to say I appreciate you coming out and reviewing
Not a
this.
problem.
And it's a sort of a lengthy meeting. We had to put you on the end because we had everybody else sort of lined up already, so I appreciate
Sure.
your patience with that. Mr. Clerk, you had a question?
Just briefly, Mr. Hecker, the applicant is Mr. Verrecchia or his company, correct?
Company, that's correct.
And after all the approvals are obtained, will the demolition of the existing site be done by Mr. Verrecchia or a company at his direction?
The answer is yes.
And after it is demolished and all of the site work begins to be done and the pad sites are being built, will that also be done by Mr. Verrecchia?
The answer is yes.
And at that point in time, does the construction of the Wawa, the Rite Aid, and the unknown food market get turned over to Wawa, Rite Aid, and the unknown food store, or does Mr. Verrecchia do it?
Yes.
So it gets...
It gets turned over to the individual retailers. or
Wawa will
restaurateurs.
build the store,
Yes.
Rite Aid will build the store, and the
that is
fast
what's
food
happening.
place.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, anything from you?
Not at this time. Thank you.
He'll get his opportunity.
I know, he's chomping at the bit. Just, we gotta give him a little,
Can't wait.
Yeah, give him, throw an hors d'oeuvre out to him. So, any other questions? No. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
And thank you for the opportunity to come in and talk to you. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to our next agenda item. Consider authorization for advertisement for LED streetlights for Falls Township. At our last meeting, while Mr. Gray was sunning himself on the beach, we took a look at the LED presentation and decided that we were going to move forward in terms of purchasing the actual equipment. This authorization to advertise is looking for a contractor to install those lights. Mr. Gray, add anything?
Yes, that's correct. At this time, the board is asked to consider authorization to advertise.
Okay. And the bid documents are still in the process of being...
Yes, they're being finalized right now. They should be completed shortly. Then we'll advertise and they'll hit the street.
Okay. All right. Comments or questions?
No.
No? All right. Is there a motion to approve authorization to advertise?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Minutes, next agenda item, August 19th, 2014. Comments or questions regarding the minutes?
I wasn't present at the meeting, but I did watch the replay on our new YouTube channel. Excellent minutes, as always, Mrs. Pullen. That's it.
All right, okay. Any other?
No, they look good.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
That's right, I jumped ahead. Okay, we had executive session earlier. Manager comment, Mr. Gray.
Yes, just two items tonight. We did receive a request from Kathleen Metz at 7 Noblewood Lane in Levittown. They have had a final inspection for the installation of their pool, and it has passed. They are requesting a refund of the earth disturbance fee that was initially paid for $2,030. This has been reviewed by our engineer's office, and this has been recommended for release. Total amount of the amount remaining is $1,200. The board is asked to consider this release of $1,200.
Okay. All right, comments, questions?
None.
So does that mean that the permit fee was about $800?
Yes, approximately $800, yes.
That's all.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to refund the earth disturbance fee, the amount of $1,200 to Ms. Kathleen Metz?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Boraski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
The township received a proposal from Buyer Barber Company regarding GASB 45 other post-employment benefit obligations. Each municipality size of Falls Township, is required to have a full GASB 45 actuarial evaluation performed once every 3 years. To prepare the calendar year 2014 GASB 45 liability disclosure valuation, they are quoting a price of $3,800. This will also include evaluation for the years 2015 and 2016. We did do this in, as mentioned earlier, in 2011 and also in 2008. The board is asked to consider this proposal from Buyer Barber.
How much was it?
$3,800.
And just for the sake of us who are not accountants, Mr. Gray, what is GASB 45?
GASB is an accounting pronouncement. It's required to report all the liabilities for the post-retirement health benefits, basically for our police officers. Every active employee, active officer, and retired officer, what the value of the post-retirement benefits are that we currently have available on the books for them. And this would go from the recent officer who was just hired all the way up to an officer who may have retired maybe 30 years ago, every officer in between.
Okay.
And then they come up with a liability, we report it on our books, and we have to report it for disclosure.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions?
No.
No? All right. Is there a motion then to retain the services of Buyer Barber in the amount of $3,800 to do the GASB 45 review?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Boraski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Board comment. Mr. Dents?
Sure. I wasn't at the last meeting, but we're going to talk about, with Mr. Sullivan, the road program over in Hedgerow Woods. Winding Way, no, not Winding Way, Rice Drive is finally coming together, but it's some snags on Bernard. Can you go over that with us, please?
The snag we hit on Bernard was a water main that is in close proximity to the storm sewer we're trying to install. It's an old type water main made of very brittle material, and if you just touch it with any kind of machine or any kind of equipment, it falls apart and creates a huge water main break. We've been approached by PA American to perhaps replace that section of the main, and then we can put our storm sewer in without any trouble. We're still negotiating with PA American, and they're negotiating with our road contractor to see what the cost would be and how long it would take to do that. They think about 4 weeks, which would unfortunately put the paving operation sometime in October.
What does that mean?
That means that we'd have to do the water main, then the storm sewer, and then actually pave the road.
So optimistically, it would be 4 weeks.
Optimistically,
Reality would be about 8.
Reality is probably closer to 6 to 8 weeks for something like that. The main has to be installed, it has to be flushed, chlorinated, tested, and then you have to drop back and do each service connection for each resident.
And that's all of Bernard Drive?
That's from, I think, Share Drive or Walton Drive to the end. Stony Hill, not quite. As Stony Hill goes up, the water main goes farther away and our storm sewer ends, so.
Can we do asphalt in November? Or
We can do asphalt 40 degrees and rising.
and rising?
We've actually paved in December at times, so it's not impossible. The worst case scenario would be to be under binder course, which we can do up to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay. And then you come back later?
Then we come back in the spring and have to do the top coat.
Not good news for the residents on Bernard Drive.
Does it
No.
need to be replaced?
The problem is, we've already had one water main break where we worked in close proximity to this type of main, and everything went in fine, and then when you backfilled and actually tried to compact the dirt, the water broke, a water main break.
When will you have an answer to, well, how are we going to resolve this?
Hopefully by the end of this week, I'll know exactly what the cost will be.
Cost for who?
For the work and what Falls Township might be willing to contribute toward that work.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Boraski? Mr. Rocco?
Yeah, just a few things. Want to congratulate Mr. DiPolito for his advanced certification in, I guess, emergency services. He does a great job. I've unfortunately been around for the hurricane with him and other, more minor things. Mr. Gray, I was wondering if we can look at the fencing on Cardiff Road. that backs up to the park. I believe we own that. Some of it is, really needs to be repaired or replaced. So I've been approached by several residents on there about that. I don't know how many houses we own that fence on, but it backs directly up to Von Hoffman. And then just real quick on the geothermal, I know, we keep hearing about it. It's definitely something we're going to look at, and it more than likely will make sense. So I just wanted to clarify that. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a few things. I want to let residents know, especially residents who live in Thornridge, that there is going to be a public meeting involving PICO on September 18th. That's correct, Mr. Gray, right? At Penwood Middle School?
The 18th or 19th, is the 18th,
I think it's the 18th. And that is just, it's the 18th of September at Penwood Middle School in the evening. And that's open to anybody to meet with PICO representatives about a lot of the frequent outages in this area. We are still working to try to get PICO, and we will have PICO here in this room at some point for a meeting. It probably won't be a normal supervisors meeting. We might have sort of a special meeting just to have them come in, and residents of Falls Township can come and try and get some questions answered. This is something PICO's done in other areas, so we're still working on trying to nail them down on a certain date, but we do know that the 18th of September, this month, which is I think a Thursday, right? They will be at Penwood Middle School. Also want to point out that earlier today I received an email from a resident in Frails Hills who was complaining about people dumping mostly yard waste, but other kinds of waste in a vacant lot near where she lives. And her frustrations that people were doing it, the frustrations with us, because she was a little upset that we couldn't do much about it. And it is unfortunate, if our police officers don't see somebody actually doing it, then there's really not much they can do. You can't, figure out who dumped, this waste here, what day, and then, write them a ticket. It is illegal to dump any kind of waste in anywhere other than in a trash can. And in Falls Township, I've never really understood why people do it. Simply because this is the only township where you have free and essentially unlimited trash collection. You can put out as many cans as you want with anything in it, pretty much, and get it collected. There are a couple times a year when Waste Management will not pick up yard waste, and that's usually because they're doing special yard waste pickups around that time, because then they mulch it. But just to simply go out and buy some of the bags, the paper bags you get at Lowe's or Home Depot or any other Ace Hardware or anywhere else you go, and put it out, and you can put out as many as you want to. It doesn't really make a lot of sense for people to be, illegally dumping. This is something that we've dealt with in various parts of the township. It's a problem everywhere. It is illegal, and I talked to Mr. Gray about the specific complaint to try and look at some things we can do. I know we've talked a little bit about sort of stiffening the fines for littering and dumping, and that's something I think that we should look at and try and find some other ways to get people to sort of not do this. This woman, unfortunately, has it happen right across the street from her, so she looks out her front window and she sees all the stuff that people have dumped in this vacant lot. So that's obviously something we're going to try and work, obviously, with her problem and help her out. But, it's, I think, quite frankly, just laziness. It's lack of respect for your neighbors. It's lack of respect for your community. And I would hope that people just wouldn't do it. I know people will anyway. But hopefully you can just kind of think about the fact that, it's completely unnecessary in this township to do something like that. So we ask people to think more about their neighbors, think more about Falls Township and what makes it a great place to live, and hopefully we can get this problem a little bit under control. And finally, just yesterday, celebrating Labor Day. We know that officially, of course, the recession that started in 2007 ended several years ago. However, that doesn't mean the effects of it have gone away. And there are a great number of people in this country and in our township who are working harder, not making a whole lot more money, maybe working multiple jobs to replace the one they lost several years ago. I think we as a country have to start thinking about where our priorities are in terms of the kinds of salaries people should be making for the kind of work they're doing, and what it takes to raise a family and what kind of salary people need to be receiving. For a long time we could exist in this country with one person, usually the father, usually the husband, usually the man, but not always. Working a job, and then mom could stay home. We remember all the TV shows from the 50s, Donna Reed and Leave It to Beaver and all that kind of idyllic family. And obviously that didn't exist everywhere, but it did exist more than it does now. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that salaries have stayed stagnant. And so families now have no choice but to have both parents work. It's not necessarily that they want to, but they have to. And in the meantime, we see record profits in major companies, and Wall Street at all kinds of record-breaking highs. And I think we have to think about the kinds of people in our state and national capital that are casting votes and who they're casting those votes for. And I think we need to start making some decisions based on how we can get people working again, and show a true respect for work and a true respect for labor. So I think that's one of the essences of Labor Day. It's gotten lost. It's just sort of one more picnic, and we have to think about why that holiday began and how the country has changed over the past couple decades. So I want to thank everybody out there who's doing everything they can, working hard at jobs that don't always get the respect that they deserve, and hope that things can start to change a little bit. Thank the people here for the work they do. Okay, the staff and the professionals here in this building who come here to these meetings, as well as the gentlemen that I'm up here working with, so who certainly don't do it for the salary or the benefits. They do it because they love their community. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
It's a hot one.